Now, let's go to the second part of the presentation, which is about a simple demo on how to create your first HTML page and host it on GitHub, and then also serve it so that other people can visit and see your HTML page or pages as a website. So this is just a simple demo through GitHub, but I'm also going to go through some schematics, some diagrams, because it's really important to understand and get the overall picture of how this thing, the steps that we're going to go through, really work. It's always important to have like high level, especially visual overview of how things work and what happens whenever we run a command or we use a programming language or we do something. So in this diagram, I have like a computer. So here's a computer, your computer. And most of the times, you open up your browser and you go into a web page like Google or some other website, and you browse and you interact and you do your work. So what happens when you open up your browser? So basically, the browser given a specific address. So you go to integration.com or google.com, or you paste an address, or sometimes it automatically spins up with the browser, comes up with like an initial page, like most of the times it's Google. What you do is that your browser sends a request to a web server, and let me give this capacity. So your browser makes a request to another computer, which runs a software that we call a web server, and asks for a particular resource. It asks for a particular HTML page. So a web server is just a computer that contains a folder or folders with some files. Usually these are HTML files. So whenever your browser asks for a particular HTML from a web server, the web server software first looks at a particular folder. It checks to see if the page or this resource that you requested is there. For example, index.html is kind of like the landing page, the home page, the main page that you load and you see whenever you go to google.com or yahoo.com or whatever. So the web server checks to see if the resource, the file, the HTML that you requested is there. And then it takes this file and then it sends it back to the browser. So that's what happens when you open up the browser and you type some address or you get a link to a new website. Connect with a computer that runs a special software called web server and searches for this resource and sends it back to you. Now, a web server is simply a computer that is online. It's always on. It's online 24/7. So basically a computer that runs all the time and it's always connected to the internet. That's the basic, let's say, definition for a server. Computer that's always on and it's always connected to the internet. A web server is a special category or special flavor of a server, because what it serves, what files it can serve is basically HTML files. So most of the times, a web server serves to the user, to the software, to the browser that requests some HTML file, along with other types of files. It's not limited to HTML. Like JavaScript, CSS, or images, or maybe some audio, but the main, let's say, responsibility of the web server is to start by serving HTML files. And just to give you an idea of how simple this is, like this idea of a computer that is online and always connected, I will show you the picture of the first web server. So this is the first web server. This is the Tim Berners-Lee computer, which was the first web server. It went online, it connected to the internet, and this is where people use some kind of software, like a very, very primitive browser, to connect to this web server and load the first HTML page. So this is what a web server looks like in its simplest form. It's a computer that you always have to keep online and always have to keep it connected to the internet. And the Tim Berners-Lee is the guy that invented the World Wide Web and HTML. And if we close up, you will see there was a sticker. This was in the CERN laboratory. There was a sticker on this computer because at some point Tim Berners-Lee had to go home, and this sticker said, "This machine is a server. Do not power down." So this is the idea of a server. Never power down. This should always be running. So this is the first web server. So that's the idea behind a web server. So you get you request the page, an HTML from a web server. You get back an HTML, which is of course the HTML contains it's a text file that has the extension .html, and what you have inside this file is your basic HTML code. The HTML head, title, body, h1, paragraph, and so forth, the things that you are currently like studying. Now, whenever you get these contents, these are a syntax of a particular computer language, HTML. So HTML is considered a computer language, which means that these are just instructions to a particular software, mainly the browser, to interpret these commands, interpret this language, and turn this into what you see in the browser, in the front screen. So the HTML becomes these nice images, these nice, for example, this is an HTML page that gets interpreted and displays a nice like drawing program. The Reveal.js HTML show us this nice documentation. The MDN the browser interprets the HTML of this web page and shows this documentation. So basically, this computer language gets interpreted, and the browser converts these things, these commands, into what we see whenever we visit a web page. So if you want to host your own HTML page, you want to create your own HTML and then host it on a web server so that you get other people to visit your web page and load some kind of content, some kind of things that you want to share with the world. First of all, you need to create an HTML page, so an HTML file with some HTML code. You have to store it on a web server on a computer that's always on and always connected to the internet. And then have some kind of address, a web address, so that people can type and go on that address, like google.com or integration.com, and they can find your your web page. So this is what I'm about to show you. Now, the web server is a service that you have to find out and use, because otherwise you need to have your own computer always online and always on, which is something that you probably don't want to do. Like we need to close our computer from time to time. So you have to find a server somewhere on the internet, some provider that gives you this service, sometimes for free and sometimes as a paid service. Today we're going to look at how GitHub provides this service for us for free. So the way that we're going to do this is we are going to create a new a GitHub repository on GitHub. Remember, a GitHub repository, as you can see here, is basically a folder with some files that you put, and then you have Git watching and tracking over these files and the changes that happen on these files over time, and it keeps track of the version history. The version is a version control software, so every time we change something, we can store it and we can go back in time. So GitHub repository is basically a folder with a bunch of files with the extra ability to track changes and save these changes over time in some kind of like a log, some kind of like a history log, where every single change that we made is documented and we can go back. So GitHub repository folder with super abilities, let's say with extra abilities. And GitHub is an online service, meaning we can upload these files and store them on a folder on some server, on some GitHub server. So I'm going to start from this part. I'm going to create an HTML file and then upload it on a GitHub repository. So for this one, I have an account here, and I'm going to work on this demo. I'm going to work through the web interface. I'm just going to do everything from the web page. I'm not going to use any command line tools or terminal commands. But you can, of course, use. So I'm going to create a new repository. I'm going to go here at the top right. Under my account, I'm going to say my home page. Give it a description, my first, let's say, HTML page. Now you have two options. You can either make this repository public, so anyone on the internet can see the contents, or you can make it private, so only you or people that you trust can see it. For this one, I'm going to create a public repository. There's also an option here, initialize this repository with a README file. So basically, this says that you are going to create a repository which is going to be blank. It's going to be completely empty, no files. Or we can create a simple README file for you that can act as a kind of like a basic what this is all about thing. On this one, I'm going to skip the add README file, but you can try it on another repository. So I'm just going to hit create repository. And since I have no files, I have a few options on this step. So it says I created or I'm about to create a repository, but there's no content. So what do you want me to do? So there are a couple of options here. I'm going to pick, let's say, kind of like two of the easiest options here are to either create a new file through this GitHub dashboard, or we can upload an existing file. By creating a new file, it means that we stay on this page and we are able to create and edit a file directly through our web browser. By uploading an existing file, it means that we can go back to our machine, open up our code editor, create the file, and then upload it on this repository. I'm going to pick the second, but you can also start another repository and check how this works. The first option, the creating a new file. And of course, there are more options. So I'm going to say uploading an existing file. There's this drag and drop area. So now I will go back to my computer, and I will upload this HTML, this slide. So let me say, I don't know, hello world, my first slide. Or no, this index HTML contains other files that I need to upload. So I'm going to keep this simple. So I'm just going to skip and I'm going to just create an index HTML, which is going to be a lot simpler, just one file. Now, I can start creating the HTML, the basic HTML boilerplate from scratch, which is a good exercise. But in VS Code, there's this nice shortcut. You can type the exclamation point and then press Enter or Tab to create a very basic HTML5 boilerplate. So I will give it a title, Hello World. Oops. My homepage, some subtitle here, and then a paragraph, lorem ipsum, the dummy text data that we see sometimes whenever we just want to see how our page will look like. So very, very simple page, very few tags. So I have this this file here. I will go to my folder. Here's my file, the one that I created. So I'm going to drag this and drop it on this drag and drop area. So it's uploading. Now it's uploaded. Just wait. If it's a little bit bigger, you have to wait for this progress bar to finish. And now you're ready to do your first commit. So this is basically like a graphical user interface for the Git command. So GitHub is actually Git running underneath this web site. So the command git commit that we run on the terminal is available here through this nice graphical user interface. So I will say you can either click commit changes and you will have this default basic text, or you can add your own comments, your own commit messages. So add first page and maybe some description. My first HTML page for the world. And you will create your own commit. So not only you will be creating, you uploaded your first file, but you will just committed. You just created your first entry into the Git history. Inside this GitHub repository, now you have the file, and you also have this thing in Git history that says on at this date, at this time, this file looked like this. If you change something, you'll have another change tracked and saved in the Git history, so you can go back to different versions of your web page. So we have our GitHub repository. We uploaded our first index.html. The next step is to go and let me go to my diagram. So I completed this part here. Okay, this was the upload an index.html file from my computer. So I created the index.html, on my computer. I uploaded it on a GitHub repository I just created. Now the next step is to make this file available through the GitHub web server, so that when someone requests our index.html file, the GitHub web server sends it back to the web browser that requested it, and you get to see this web page on the web browser. So the GitHub repository has this nice ability to connect your GitHub repository with a web server. This is called GitHub Pages, this nice ability to combine the GitHub web server with, let me put this here as, let's say, blue color. So think of GitHub Pages as this nice ability to not only host your files and your HTML files on the server, but also make it available through their web server, so that other people can see your HTML as a web page, not just as code or as a file with some programming code. And the way that we do it is through the settings. So once you have your GitHub repository, you go to settings, you go here under the pages part, and in here it says GitHub Pages is currently disabled. You should select the source below to enable GitHub Pages for this repository. You can also check this link for more information. What you want to do here is to select one of your branches to actually deploy this repository on the GitHub web server. So I will pick the main branch. As you can see, none is the disabled mode. I will select the only branch at this point, which is the main, and click Save. And boom, that's the only step that is needed to take your HTML page online. Now, usually you have to wait a few moments. If I refresh now, it's going to be deploying, it's going to be building this this page. Let me go here in the code section. So usually when GitHub starts to build this website and try to deploy it so it is available for other, you will see this orange icon that says pending, which means it's now working to create your website. Usually when it stops, you will see like a green check mark. So if I refresh or wait a bit, I will see this in like a done mode. Or I can go here once again under pages. Okay, now it's done. So two things that indicate that it's ready is, if I go back to the code, is I'll either see this check mark, which means success. Now your website is online, Or if we go back to the pages section through the settings, okay, settings and then pages, you will see at the top that your site is live. That means you have your first website. And in this section here, it's no longer going to say your GitHub pages is disabled. It's going to say your GitHub pages is currently okay. It says currently being built, but that means that it's already available. So it's not building right now. It's already built. It's just that every time you do some changes on your main branch, they will be rebuilding and deploying a new version. So you can visit your website through this link. And this is my website. So now you can share your link. You can copy the address, or you can copy it from here, and you can share it with the rest of the world, and everyone can see your project. The format here is that your page will live under HTTPS. Your username, this integration.x is /x is my username. So if your username is John or whatever, you will see john.github.io. So that's the domain. Your GitHub username will be prefixed, and then / your repository. So you have one repository that is going to be available under your username and your GitHub.io. And of course, you can create many websites by creating another repository, enabling GitHub pages, and then you'll have, for example, in here, integration-x github.io / my app or my gallery or my book collection or whatever. So that's a way to create your first pages, which means for your project, you will also need to enable GitHub pages. And when the presentation is ready, you will have the presentation online so that you can share with the rest of the world. So that's the overall overview. Let me see if I have something to add here. And yes, I do have one more thing to add. So for this demo, you can definitely walk through GitHub, and you can also make changes. So something that I'm going to show you is how I can change index.html and change something on the content. So you can either click this file and then click the edit here, and then my home page, I will change this to version 2, and then I can click commit to save the changes and commit them and save them in the Git history. Update index.html to version 2, committing to the main branch. And now you will see I directly change the HTML code through GitHub. If I go to my code, you will see that it's now started building the new version, right? So I made some changes, so it started building again. I think this time it will take shorter. It's going to be shorter, so it's not going to take the same amount of time. So this is going to change the website, which means that if we go to our web page, we have to wait a little bit for this to build. So that's one way that we can update the code. We can also add other files. I can go here. I can say either upload another file. I can create another HTML file. Let me go here and let's say, going to add a contact HTML, and I'm going to create a contact page, let's say, or an about us page, whatever. So you can also upload more files, so it means more pages. So I can go here and I can drop this file and I can commit, or I can directly edit and create a new file through GitHub. Once again, I can go here and I can say create new file, and then let's say gallery, HTML. Now I don't have the ability to use the VS Code thingy, but I will make this simple. I'm missing some HTML tags that are required, so I'm going to put this message here. And now you have 3 new pages. So basically you can control and you can edit everything from directly through GitHub. And every time you make some changes, you will see that the building process restarts. So you have to wait and for the building process to succeed. In here, I think you will see here the version 2 was already ready. It was the building process completed. But now GitHub, it's once again starting the building process again to have contact and gallery HTML available, which means that you can create some links through your homepage that will redirect the user to the contact page, which is not ready yet. We get this 404 file not found because it's still building the new files that we uploaded and created, the gallery.html and the contact. So we have to wait for this guy here to become green. Now, if I refresh, it should be here, and it's here. So that's one way that you can directly through GitHub, do all this file editing and manipulation, and you can also serve your content. The last thing I'm going to share with you is there are 2 things I want to share. Is that in this demo I did everything directly through GitHub. So I went to the GitHub pages, created a repository, uploaded some files, edited some files, and did all these changes remotely on the GitHub page. But you can also download this repository into your computer. So I could take all this repository and use the git clone to download and create a clone of the repository locally. So I can run the git clone command to actually download this and work through my computer. So if you run the git clone command once, you just download all this package, all this GitHub repository folder onto your own computer, and then you can start working directly through your local system. You don't have to go to GitHub pages. You just work locally. This is done by going through the GitHub again. You go here. You select one of the 3 methods available for accessing and authenticating. I'm using SSH, which is highly recommended that you set up SSH so you can use SSH. So you grab this address and then you type git clone, paste this on your terminal. So if I were to clone this on my computer, I will open up the terminal and I would say git clone and the address. This downloads the whole repository, and let's do it. Why not? And then you have my homepage and all these things here, all these files. So my homepage, and then you can start, of course, opening up and editing your content. So gallery, much better HTML syntax, and so forth. But you have to, of course, to use the git commands in here, like git add, git commit, as usual, and then git push if you want to upload these changes back to the remote repository. So add and commit are the 2 states, the 2 steps that you need to run through Git to actually save something in the Git history. And git push is when you want to upload these changes to your GitHub repository and have both the local and the remote repository in sync. So in my diagram here, git push is when I make changes locally and I decide to upload them back to my remote GitHub repository. So I didn't do this on this demo because actually I don't have the credentials for this account. I don't have an SSH key, so it will take some time for me. And this way you can just work either locally or remotely. This is just something that I did not try, but you can try it. Of course, you need to work locally. And the last thing is there is this really cool feature in GitHub that if you like the VS Code environment and you want to use VS Code and edit your files just like you do when you're working locally on your computer through VS Code, but you want to stay within GitHub, within the GitHub page, you can go to your GitHub repository and either change the github.com here with github.dev. So either you change this to github.dev, that's one way. The other, let me go back. I won't do this. The other simpler way is to press the period, the dot key on your keyboard. So if I press the period right here on my GitHub repository, it will transform this this view into VS Code. So now I'm looking at my VS Code remotely on GitHub, and I can use, the things like in here, I can say, I can use all these nice, so it's just VS Code, but running in the web browser. And of course, you have to use some Git commands. So if I want to change this and save this, I will have to go to this Git, to the source control section. So I made some changes, and you can see that Git shows me that there's some lines removed, there's some lines that were added, so it keeps track of changes as I change things on the files. And I will go here, and instead of running git add, I will press this to stage the changes. So stage changes means that I'm running git add command. So now this file is staged. I will put a commit message and then commit and push, and my page, my code will be updated. And if I go here, you will see that this is my commit message. This is the change I just did through the code editor mode of GitHub, and it's now building the new page. So in a few seconds, I will be seeing my my new changes. So that's another cool feature of GitHub. So just press dot and on any GitHub repository, all public ones, and then you'll be able to see the content in a kind of like a Visual Studio Code mode. If this is your repository, you have access, you can also edit and save, which is pretty cool. You don't need to work locally. So these are the things I wanted to share with you today. Basically, that's a very simple way to serve our HTML pages and create our very first websites, make them available online for free, which is pretty cool. And there are many more like capabilities and things that you can do with GitHub. So that's kind of like just the tip of the iceberg. But it's a really nice way to save and share your content with the world. So that's it for the demo today. You can see the page is now ready. So if I go and I say gallery, I can see my my updated code. So that's kind of like a rough overview of what we did through this demo.